In the cold silence of deep space, a fleet of alien warships floated above a dying planet. The sky burned with fire and smoke as cities fell one by one. The Council of 12, rulers of 100 alien worlds, watched from orbit. Their decision had been final: ban the humans from all wars. They believed humanity was too dangerous, too unpredictable, too wild. "War is over," said High Chancellor Verthal. His voice echoed inside the massive chamber of glass and steel. "No more human soldiers. No more chaos. Peace will rule." The council members nodded in agreement. They thought humanity would obey. They were wrong. On a lonely asteroid near the edge of known space, a small ship drifted among the rocks. Inside it, Captain Elias Kane sat alone in the dark. His uniform was torn, his face marked with scars from old battles. The war had taken everything from him: his crew, his planet, his home. But not his spirit. He listened to the old recording again. The voice of the Chancellor played through static. "Effective immediately, all human military activity is banned. All weapons must be surrendered. All human fleets are to be dismantled." Elias smiled, but there was no joy in it. "You can ban us," he whispered, "but you can't erase what we are." Far away, on a mining colony called Vera 9, rumors began to spread. Miners spoke in whispers about human soldiers gathering again: outlaws, mercenaries, old war heroes who refused to kneel. They called themselves the Forgotten Legion. No one knew where they were hiding. Some said in the shadow of black holes. Some said under the ice of dead moons. But all agreed on one thing: if the Legion returned, no power in the galaxy could stop them. Meanwhile, the Council grew restless. Reports arrived of missing patrol ships. Communications went dark in the outer sectors. Strange signals echoed in space, coded messages written in old human war codes. "Impossible," said Verthal. "We destroyed their fleets." A young officer looked pale. "Sir, it seems they built new ones." The Chancellor slammed his fist against the table. "Find them. End this rebellion before it spreads." But it was already too late. Deep inside a forgotten hangar, Captain Elias walked between rows of silent machines, massive steel suits once worn by humanity's finest warriors. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dark. Each one was marked with a name. He stopped beside one marked Seraph 01. "Wake up," he said softly. Lights flickered. The old war machine came to life, its voice low and mechanical. "Captain Kane. Orders?" Elias looked out at the endless stars. "We're going back." The machine paused. "War is forbidden." Elias grinned. "So is surviving, apparently. Let's break both rules." Across the galaxy, alarms began to scream. Satellite networks picked up movement, hundreds of ships launching from forgotten worlds. A human fleet rising again, silent and determined. In a council war room, panic spread. "They can't be active," shouted one alien general. "Their engines were dismantled." "Apparently not all," said another. The Chancellor's voice shook with anger. "Then destroy them before they reach the colonies." But humanity had learned from every defeat, every betrayal. They moved in silence, invisible through space, using old routes and dead signals. Elias stood on the command bridge of his rebuilt ship, the Valkyrie, surrounded by veterans who had once sworn never to fight again. "Why come back?" asked his first officer, a woman named Juno. "They banned us, Captain. We're ghosts." Elias looked at the stars. "Because ghosts don't die. They haunt." The fleet moved toward their first target, a communication hub on the edge of the Council's territory. It controlled messages between hundreds of systems. Destroy it, and the aliens would be blind. When they arrived, the hub's defenses were ready. Drones filled the sky, laser fire flashing in the dark. "Shields up," shouted Juno. The Valkyrie shook as explosions tore through the void. The crew held their ground, hands moving fast over controls. Elias stared at the enemy formation on his screen. They think we're broken, he said. Let's remind them who taught them fear. Firing main cannon. A beam of light tore through space, splitting the nearest ship in two. The explosion lit up the stars like sunrise. The Forgotten Legion had returned. On the Council's capital world, news spread fast. Panic gripped every chamber. Humanity is attacking again. Verthal's eyes burned with rage. Then let them come. We will end them forever. But in that moment he didn't know, the humans had already begun something far greater than war. They were fighting not for planets, not for power, but for their right to exist. As the Valkyrie disappeared into hyperspace, Elias looked down at an old photograph taped to his console. His crew, his friends, all smiling before the war. He whispered to himself, "You can ban us from your wars, but you can't ban us from surviving." And somewhere in the dark, thousands of human voices answered the same silent call. The war for humanity had begun again. The silence after battle felt strange. The wreckage of alien ships floated slowly in the darkness, glowing with the red heat of broken metal. Inside the Valkyrie, the lights flickered, and the crew worked fast to repair damaged systems. Captain Elias Kane stood near the viewing glass, watching the shattered communication hub drift into pieces. Their first strike had worked. The Council's networks were down across 5 systems. But he knew this was only the beginning. "Status report," he said. Juno looked up from her console. "Shields at 40%. Engines stable. We lost 2 cruisers, the Vega and the Nomad." Elias nodded slowly. "We'll remember them. Prepare a beacon. No names forgotten." The crew moved quietly. No one celebrated. In human wars, victory always came with a price. A message beeped on the screen. It was an encrypted signal, human code, old and familiar. Elias played it. A rough voice came through. "This is Commander Reese of the Obsidian Flame. We're still out here, Captain. Heard you woke the Legion. We want in." Elias smiled faintly. "Send coordinates," he said. The message ended. Another ally was returning. Humanity's warriors were gathering again, scattered across the stars like sparks ready to become fire. On the Council's capital world, things were falling apart. Communication delays spread confusion. Fleets could not contact command. Trade routes were silent. The fear of humans returned like an old nightmare. High Chancellor Verthal paced inside the war chamber. "They are outlaws," he shouted. "They have no supply lines, no allies, no planets. Crush them." An officer hesitated. "Sir, reports say humans are using old relay stations. They have hidden support across the outer rim. Find who helps them," the Chancellor growled. "And burn them." But his voice trembled slightly. For the first time in years, he felt uncertain. Back on the Valkyrie, Elias watched the stars blur as they jumped through hyperspace. Juno stepped beside him. "You think we can win this?" "Win?" Elias repeated softly. "We're not here to win. We're here to remind them that humans don't disappear just because someone signs a law." Juno smiled weakly. "Sounds like you still believe in legends." "Legends are just stories no one had the courage to finish," he said. They arrived near Obsidian Station, an abandoned human outpost built inside an asteroid. The place looked dead. No lights, no signals. "Docking sequence ready," Juno said. As the ship approached, the asteroid's surface shifted. Hidden doors opened, revealing a hangar glowing with faint blue lights. Inside waited several ships with the symbol of a silver phoenix, the mark of the Obsidian Flame. Commander Reese met Elias at the dock. He was older, his armor scratched and burned. "Didn't think I'd see you again, Kane." Elias clasped his arm. "You should know by now, humans are bad at dying." Reese laughed. "So what's the plan?" Elias pointed to the star map projected in the air. "We hit their supply routes next. They think we're just raiders. Let's make them realize we're organized." Reese studied the map. That's suicide. Those routes are defended by the Draxian fleet. Elias shrugged. Then we start with one ship. Hours later, the human fleet moved again, small, fast, silent. Their target was a massive convoy carrying fuel to the Council's warships. They dropped out of hyperspace near the convoy's edge. Enemy ships ahead, Juno said. 17 cargo carriers, 4 escorts. Good, Elias replied. We'll take the escorts. The rest will run. The Valkyrie's guns roared to life. The first blast tore through an escort ship before it could raise shields. Human fighters swarmed forward like metal wasps, moving fast and precise. Within minutes, the convoy was in chaos. Explosions flashed across the black sky. Cargo containers spun into space. A transmission came from one of the alien captains. Human fleet, you are violating Council law. Surrender immediately. Elias smiled coldly. We've been violating your laws since birth. He cut the channel and fired again. The battle lasted only 10 minutes. When it ended, the humans disappeared once more into the dark, leaving behind drifting wrecks and silence. Back at the Council, panic grew. Every sector now reported human attacks. They are everywhere, shouted a commander. How can outlaws strike so precisely? Verthal slammed the table. They are using information we don't have. Someone is helping them. He turned toward the room's shadowed corner, where a tall figure in black armor stood silently. You promised results, Verthal hissed. The figure bowed slightly. Patience, Chancellor. I know how humans think. They cannot hide forever. Verthal narrowed his eyes. And who are you to know them so well? The figure lifted his helmet. Beneath it was a scarred human face. Because I used to be one of them. Far away, on the Valkyrie, Elias sat alone in the command chair. He stared at a hologram of old battle reports. Something in the data looked wrong. Too many traps avoided, too many coincidences. He frowned. Someone's feeding us to them, he murmured. Juno turned. You think there's a traitor? Elias nodded slowly. Or worse, someone who knows how we fight. The stars outside glowed brighter as the fleet prepared for their next mission. None of them knew that an enemy who once wore their uniform was hunting them now. The Forgotten Legion had become legend again, but legends always draw monsters. And in the silent dark between worlds, that monster had already found their trail. The stars outside the Valkyrie looked calm, but inside the ship, silence had weight. No one laughed anymore. Every battle they fought felt too easy, every escape too clean. Captain Elias Kane could feel it in his bones. Someone was watching them. He stood by the window of the command deck, looking at the glowing trails of ships moving in formation. Juno walked up beside him. We hit 3 convoys last week, she said quietly. The Council still hasn't found us. Elias didn't answer right away. His eyes stayed fixed on the stars. That's the problem, he said. They should have found us by now. Juno frowned. You think it's a trap? I think, Elias said slowly, we're dancing to someone else's music. Far away, on the Council's capital, the dark armored man stood before Chancellor Verthal. Around them, the war chamber glowed red with incoming alerts. You said you could stop them, the Chancellor growled. The man smiled faintly. I didn't say stop. I said control. Explain. The man's voice was calm and cold. Humans are predictable when they think they're winning. Let them gather. Let them strike. I'll lead them to the perfect place, then you crush them in one blow. Verthal studied him carefully. You claim to know them. Yet you betrayed your own kind. I didn't betray them, the man said softly. I outgrew them. His name was Admiral Draven Soul, once one of Earth's most decorated commanders, missing since the last Great War. Now, he was the hunter. Back on the Valkyrie, Elias walked into the war room. A hologram of the galaxy shimmered in the air. Reese and Juno stood nearby, watching the data scroll past. Council fleets are massing in the Orion Pass, Reese said. If we strike there, we can cut off half their supply lines. Elias looked at the map. It's too perfect. Too obvious. Juno nodded. But if we don't hit soon, they'll recover. Elias rubbed his temples. Every instinct told him something was wrong. But he also knew that waiting too long meant losing momentum and fear. Humans couldn't afford that. Set course, he said finally. We move at dawn cycle. Hours later, the Valkyrie entered hyperspace. Engines hummed, lights dimmed, and every crew member felt that quiet mix of fear and hope that came before battle. Elias sat in his chair, thinking about Earth, the blue world that once held oceans and laughter. The Council had turned it into dust. That memory was his fire. Captain, Juno said softly, breaking the silence. Do you ever wonder what happens after this? If we actually win? Elias smiled faintly. Then we start again. That's what humans do. We build from ruins. She nodded, but her eyes showed doubt. And if we lose? Elias looked straight ahead. Then we make sure they never forget we tried. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Orion Pass, a massive region filled with shattered asteroids and drifting wrecks from old wars. Scanners reading clear, Juno said. No enemy ships detected. Reese grinned. Looks like luck's with us. Elias didn't smile. Luck doesn't last this long. He turned toward the tactical screen. Deploy probes. I want eyes everywhere. Minutes passed. The silence stretched too long. Then one of the screens flickered. Contact! Shouted a technician. Multiple signatures, closing fast. Red lights flashed across the bridge. Where did they come from? Juno cried. They were cloaked. Dozens of massive ships appeared from the shadow of the asteroids. Council warships, their weapons glowing bright. Elias's eyes hardened. All hands to battle stations. The Valkyrie shuddered as the first barrage hit. Explosions rippled through space. Human ships scattered, returning fire, but they were outnumbered 5-1. This was a setup. Reese yelled. They knew we were coming. Elias clenched his fists. Someone told them. On the lead council ship, Admiral Draven Soul watched the chaos unfold. Through the viewing glass, he saw human ships burning, his old comrades, his old enemies. End this. Verthal's voice echoed through the comms. Destroy them all. Draven didn't answer. His eyes lingered on one ship, the Valkyrie. Elias Kane, he whispered. You never learned when to stop. Inside the Valkyrie, alarms screamed. Fire burst from one of the lower decks. Juno shouted orders as the ship rolled to avoid another blast. Shields failing. Reactor overheating. Elias gritted his teeth. Divert all power to engines. Prepare emergency jump. Reese looked at him. We can't outrun them. Elias gave a small, dangerous smile. Who said anything about running? He turned toward the weapons console. Lock main cannon on that flagship. Their shields are too strong. Then aim for the heart, Elias said. The cannon charged. The ship trembled as it fired, a blinding beam slicing through the dark. It hit the Council flagship straight in the center. The explosion rippled across space, throwing both fleets into confusion. Jump! Elias shouted. The Valkyrie vanished into hyperspace, battered but alive. Back on the burning battlefield, Draven stood amid the wreckage of his damaged ship. The bridge was in ruins, smoke rising everywhere. Sir, the humans escaped, said a wounded officer. Draven wiped blood from his face. His expression was calm, almost proud. Of course they did, he said quietly. They always do. He looked into the stars where the Valkyrie had vanished. Run, Elias. Run while you can. Next time, I'll be waiting. On the Valkyrie, The crew caught their breath. Silence filled the cabin again. Juno turned to Elias. Who was that out there? Elias stared at the burned display screen. Someone who used to fight beside us. Rhys frowned. A human. Elias nodded slowly. And the Council's new weapon. Juno's eyes widened. Then the war just changed. Elias looked out at the endless stars. No, he said quietly. It just became personal. The Valkyrie drifted quietly through deep space, its engines flickering weakly. The ship was broken but alive, like its crew. Inside the command deck, sparks still jumped from burnt-out panels. Everyone moved slowly, tired but focused. Captain Elias Kane stood near the cracked glass of the bridge window, watching the endless stars. He hadn't slept in 2 days. The last battle had cost them too much, 3 ships lost, half their fleet scattered. But what haunted him most wasn't the loss. It was the face he had seen on the enemy's flagship. Draven Soul. Once his mentor. Once the man who had trained him to fight, to lead, to survive. Now the Council's weapon. Captain, said Juno softly, walking up beside him. Engineering reports we can't hold another jump until we repair the core. 2 days, minimum. Elias nodded slowly. Make it happen. We'll stay hidden in this system. Rhys entered the bridge, his uniform stained with grease and smoke. Scans show no pursuit, but, Captain, I think you should see this. He placed a small datapad on the console. The screen showed a transmission, blurred, but the voice was clear. This is Admiral Draven Soul, it said. To all surviving human fleets. You think you fight for freedom. You fight for ghosts. Humanity was banned for a reason. Stand down, or I will end you myself. The crew went silent. Juno looked at Elias. He's calling us out. Elias's jaw tightened. Then we answer. Far away, on the Council's capital, Chancellor Verthal stood before the great viewing window, watching the stars burn with war. You promised to destroy them, he said coldly. Draven stood behind him, calm and still. You wanted them afraid. Now they are. Verthal turned sharply. I want them gone. Draven's eyes narrowed. They will be. But understand something, Chancellor, humans don't die the way you think they do. They remember. They wait. You speak as if you still are one of them. Draven gave a faint smile. I remember what they were. And that's why I'll win. Back on the Valkyrie, Elias gathered the senior officers in the war room. The holographic map flickered, showing dozens of systems, many marked red. Rhys pointed at one near the center. The Council's supply world. Callus 4. Draven's fleet refuels there. If we hit it, we hurt them bad. Juno frowned. It's a fortress. We'd be walking into another trap. Elias nodded. Maybe. But this time, we set the bait. He zoomed in on the map, showing the planet's orbit. We hit fast, then disappear. But before we go, we leave something behind. What? Rhys asked. A virus, Elias said. Digital, not biological. One that shuts down their tracking systems. Draven uses those to find us. Juno's eyes widened. You want to blind him. Elias nodded again. Exactly. If he can't see us, he can't predict us. Rhys crossed his arms. We'll need someone on the ground to plant it. Elias looked at him. I'll go. Captain, that's suicide. Elias smiled faintly. That's what they said last time too. 2 days later, the Valkyrie emerged near Callus 4. The planet glowed below, a mix of blue oceans and gray cities covered with council towers. Stealth engaged, Juno reported. Good, Elias said. Take us to low orbit. We go in quiet. A small shuttle detached from the ship, diving toward the planet's atmosphere. Inside were Elias and a small team, 5 soldiers, all from the old wars. They wore matte black armor with no insignia. The descent was rough, fire streaking across the windows as they entered the lower sky. "Landing in 30 seconds, said the pilot. Elias checked his weapon, then looked at the horizon, giant towers rising from the clouds. Somewhere down there was the control node for the Council's tracking grid. "Once we're in," Elias said, "we move fast. No noise, no hesitation." The shuttle touched down in the shadow of a ruined factory. The team moved quickly through the debris, their boots crunching on metal dust. They reached the base entrance, a guarded checkpoint glowing with red lights. "2 sentries," whispered Juno through the comms from orbit. "Thermal shows 6 more inside." Elias nodded. "We go silent." In seconds, the team moved. 2 quiet shots. 2 bodies down. They slipped inside before alarms could sound. The base was cold and metallic, humming with energy. The main console stood at the far end, glowing blue. Elias moved to it, inserted a small black drive. Lines of code filled the screen. "Upload started," said Juno's voice in his ear. 30 seconds. Then, an alarm. Red lights. The floor vibrated. "They found us." Gunfire erupted. The team took cover behind steel walls. 15 seconds. Juno shouted. Elias fired back, hitting one of the alien guards. Smoke filled the air. 10 seconds. A plasma bolt tore through his armor. He grunted but stayed up. 5, 4. The console turned green. "Upload complete." "Pull out," Elias shouted. They ran through fire and debris. One soldier fell, another dragged him to the shuttle. As they lifted off, explosions tore across the base. "The virus is in," Juno said. "They're blind." Elias sat back, bleeding but smiling. "Then we just evened the field." On the Council's main ship, Draven watched his tracking screens flicker and die. "What's happening?" Verthal shouted. "Human interference," Draven said quietly. "They're learning faster than I expected." The Chancellor turned to him. "Then destroy them before they learn too much." Draven didn't answer. He looked at the blank screens, thinking of one man, Elias Kane. A faint, almost sad smile crossed his face. "You always did know how to surprise me, Captain." He turned away. "But you can't hide forever." In the quiet dark of space, the Valkyrie drifted again. The crew tended to the wounded, repaired the ship, and counted the cost. Elias stood in the medbay, staring at his reflection in the glass. His side was bandaged, his face pale. Juno stepped in. "You should rest." "Can't," he said softly. "He's still out there." She hesitated. "Draven." Elias nodded. "He trained me to win wars. But he also trained me to think. And that means he knows what I'll do next." Juno frowned. "Then how do we beat him?" Elias looked at the stars through the window. "We stop fighting like soldiers," he said. "And start fighting like humans." The Valkyrie floated in the silent dark. After the battle at Callus 4, everything felt too still. The engines hummed weakly, and the crew moved like ghosts through the ship's narrow halls. Captain Elias Kane sat alone in the war room, a cup of cold coffee untouched beside him. The virus had worked. The Council's scanners were blind. For the first time in months, humanity had the advantage. But Elias didn't feel victory. He felt the weight of something unseen. A message blinked on the console. Encrypted. Human code. He tapped the screen, and a woman's face appeared. Short hair, sharp eyes. Commander Lyra Trent. She was part of another hidden fleet, one he hadn't heard from in years. "Captain Kane," she said, her voice crackling with static. "We've been watching. The virus you planted, it opened doors. We can hit the Council's command network from inside. But we need your help to finish it." Elias leaned forward. "Where?" "Sector Delta 9, she said. "A relay station deep in Council space. If we take it, we can end their control over the fleets." Juno stepped into the room just as the message ended. "You trust her?" she asked quietly. Elias stared at the dark screen. "I trust humans who still fight." Juno frowned. "Or she could be bait." "Maybe," Elias said. "But if we don't move, this war drags on forever." He turned toward the intercom. "Get everyone ready. We're not done yet." Far away, in the heart of the council, Admiral Draven Sol stood before a massive holomap showing every battle zone. His expression was calm, but his eyes were sharp. A technician approached nervously. "Sir, the humans just attacked Callus 4. Our networks are offline." Draven nodded slowly. "Yes. I know. Then, how will we track them?" Draven smiled faintly. "We don't need to. They'll come to us." He looked at one flashing mark on the map, Sector Delta 9. "Prepare the ambush," he said. 2 days later, the Valkyrie and Lyra Trent's fleet met in orbit above a dead moon. Dozens of human ships surrounded the barren rock like silent shadows. When Elias entered the briefing room, Lyra was already there. She looked strong, but there was something cold in her eyes. "Good to see you alive," she said. "Same to you," Elias replied. "You sure this relay station is the key?" Lyra nodded. "It connects all Council command signals. We destroy it, their fleets go blind permanently." Reese crossed his arms. "Sounds too easy." Lyra smiled faintly. "Maybe the universe finally gives us one break." Elias didn't smile back. He had learned that easy plans never stayed easy. The human fleets moved through the dark, engines silent, lights off. Their destination, the relay station orbiting a dying red star. When they arrived, the structure floated ahead, massive, ring-shaped, glowing faintly with blue energy. No ships defended it. No signals, no alarms. "Too quiet," Juno whispered. Elias felt a chill crawl up his spine. "Lyra, are you sure?" Before he could finish, alarms blared across the bridge. "Multiple warp signatures," shouted the technician. "They're surrounding us." Hundreds of Council warships appeared from the void, weapons hot. "It's a trap," Reese yelled. Elias turned sharply to Lyra's image on the holoscreen. "What did you do?" Lyra's expression didn't change. "I did what I had to, Elias. They promised freedom for the colonies. I gave them you." Juno's voice trembled. "You betrayed us." Lyra's eyes hardened. "I saved the rest of us. They only wanted you." Elias stared at her for a long second. Then he said quietly, "You never understood humanity, Lyra. We don't survive by surrendering." He cut the transmission. "All ships, engage." The sky exploded. Laser fire tore through space, red and gold streaks lighting the darkness. The Valkyrie twisted between enemy lines, its hull shaking with each hit. "Shields dropping," shouted Juno. "Return fire," Elias ordered. Human fighters launched in swarms, weaving through the chaos. One by one, they struck enemy engines and vanished before being hit. But there were too many Council ships. Then a massive shadow appeared, a black flagship, larger than all others. Draven's ship. "Open channel," Elias said. Draven's face appeared on the screen, calm as ever. "You always were predictable, Captain. Even your virus played into my plan. Now humanity ends for good." Elias's voice was steady. "You can't end what doesn't surrender." Draven smiled faintly. "We'll see." His fleet opened fire. The Valkyrie spun hard, flames streaking across its side. "Core's unstable," shouted Juno. "We can't take much more." Elias stared at the star map. His mind moved fast, calculating, planning. Then his eyes landed on the relay station itself. "Target the relay," he said suddenly. Reese turned to him, shocked. "But we'll destroy ourselves." "Maybe," Elias said. "But if we take it down, we take their entire command system with it. No more control. No more counsel. Juno hesitated. Captain. Do it. The Valkyrie turned toward the relay, engines burning white. Enemy fire slammed into the hull, tearing it apart, but still it moved. Charging main cannon, said Juno through the smoke. Elias looked out the cracked window, his voice quiet but strong. This is for every human they tried to erase. Firing. The cannon roared. The beam hit the relay station dead center. A brilliant light flooded the void, spreading outward like fire through oil. Council ships lost power. Alarms screamed. The entire network collapsed. Draven's ship was caught in the explosion, torn apart by the blast. The Valkyrie was thrown back, spinning, breaking apart. When the light faded, silence returned. Wreckage drifted everywhere. In the debris field, a small escape pod blinked faintly. Inside, Juno opened her eyes, coughing. The seat beside her was empty. Elias, she whispered. Outside, the last fragments of the Valkyrie burned like falling stars. But somewhere in the dark, far from the wreck, a new beacon activated. A human signal. A voice came through the static. This is Captain Elias Kane. If you can hear this, humanity still fights. The galaxy had gone quiet. After the destruction of the relay station, communication across Council space collapsed. Fleets drifted without orders, colonies were cut off, and chaos spread from one system to another. In that silence, whispers began again. The humans did it. Some called it terror. Others called it justice. But for the first time in years, everyone knew one truth. The Council was no longer in control. A lonely cargo ship drifted through the wreckage field near the destroyed relay. Inside, Juno sat by a cracked viewport, staring at the stars. The escape pod had been found by scavengers who still remembered the old human wars. She should have been dead. Everyone thought the Valkyrie was gone. But she had survived. And so had hope. The door behind her hissed open, and Reese stepped in. His left arm was wrapped in metal braces, his face marked by burns. Still watching ghosts? He asked softly. Juno didn't look up. He's out there. Reese sighed. It's been 3 weeks, Juno. We searched every signal, every wreck. The captain's gone. She finally turned to him. He left a message, Reese. The beacon. It came from beyond the Veil sector. That's impossible, Reese said. That region is dead space, black holes, radiation, nothing survives there. Juno's eyes hardened. He survived everything else. Far away, in the shadow of a dying star, a small ship drifted half alive. Inside, Elias Kane woke to the sound of static. His body ached, his uniform torn and burned. The escape systems had thrown him across light years before shutting down. The cabin lights flickered. He coughed, then smiled faintly. Still here. He pulled himself to the controls. The systems were damaged, but one signal still blinked on the screen, a faint pulse from human code. He opened it. It was Juno's voice. Captain, if you're alive, we're regrouping near Titan's Rest. Humanity isn't finished yet. Elias leaned back, exhaustion in his eyes but determination in his heart. Not finished, he whispered. Never. He set the ship's coordinates and pushed the engines to life. Meanwhile, in the Council's broken capital, panic ruled the halls. Without their relay network, their fleets turned on each other. Different species blamed one another for the collapse. High Chancellor Verthal sat in the dark, his empire burning around him. Find Draven, he hissed to his guards. He was on the flagship. He must still be alive. No one answered. But somewhere deep beneath the capital, in a medical chamber filled with machines, a single pod opened. Admiral Draven's soul gasped for air. His body was covered in scars and wires. The explosion had nearly killed him, but not quite. A doctor hurried over. You should rest. Draven grabbed the man's wrist. How long? 3 weeks since the battle, sir. Draven stood slowly, his legs shaking. And the humans? The doctor hesitated. Scattered. Their network, growing again. Draven's eyes darkened. Then the war isn't over. He looked out through the glass of the medical bay at the burning city beyond. It's just changing. On Titan's Rest, a hidden base carved inside a frozen moon, Juno stood before a crowd of survivors. Engineers, pilots, and old soldiers filled the hall. 3 weeks ago, they thought we were dead, she said, her voice echoing. Now they can't find us. The council is blind. Humanity still lives because we don't stop. A cheer rose from the crowd. Reese stepped forward beside her. We'll rebuild the fleet. The Valkyrie may be gone, but we'll make something new. He looked at the banner hanging above them, a simple white cloth marked with a handprint. Humanity's mark. Elias Kane taught us something, Juno said. That being human isn't about orders or laws. It's about defiance. About standing up when the universe tells you to kneel. She looked up at the stars through the open dome. And if he's still out there, he'll come back. Because that's what humans do. In the void beyond known space, Elias's small ship limped through radiation storms and black clouds of dust. He could see the edges of things that shouldn't exist, broken ships, twisted fragments of ancient wars, even a planet split in half. He was almost out of power. Suddenly, a shadow moved outside his window, massive and silent. At first, he thought it was an asteroid, but then lights appeared. A structure. A ship. No, not a ship. A fleet. Old human warships, lost decades ago, floating together in a hidden graveyard. Elias's breath caught. The lost fleet, he whispered. He sent a signal. No reply. Then, slowly, one of the ships turned toward him. Its lights came on, dim but alive. A voice broke through the static. Identify yourself. This is Captain Elias Kane of the Valkyrie. Humanity still fights. A pause. Then the voice returned, stronger. Then maybe it's time humanity fights together again. Back at Titan's Rest, Juno was working on the command console when the radar suddenly beeped. Reese, she called. We've got a signal, from beyond the Veil sector. He ran in, eyes wide. What kind of signal? Juno smiled, tears in her eyes. It's him. Across the galaxy, beacons lit up one by one. Old ships, hidden colonies, forgotten soldiers, all answering the same call. Humanity was rising again. And in the shadows of the ruined council, Admiral Draven Soul watched the transmissions on a cracked screen. He whispered to himself, You really are impossible, Elias. He turned toward the stars. Then I'll find you. One last time. The signal spread like fire across the dark. Every old relay that still worked, every forgotten colony that still had power, heard the same message. This is Captain Elias Kane. Humanity still fights. And the galaxy answered. At Titan's Rest, Juno watched the data screens flood with coordinates. Hidden outposts came alive. Old captains checked in, the Nomad 2, the Iron Sun, the Dauntless. Even small merchant ships and mining crafts armed themselves for war. Reese stepped beside her. He really found them, didn't he? Juno smiled. The lost fleet wasn't lost. It was waiting. She looked at the stars. We're bringing everyone home. Far beyond the moonbase, in the graveyard of dead stars, Elias Kane stood on the bridge of a massive warship, the Eternal Spear. Around him, dozens of huge human ships drifted in formation, their armor scarred, their engines roaring back to life. Old banners were raised again. Crews who thought the war was over prepared for one last fight. Elias looked across the dark, his voice calm but heavy. Transmit to all ships, he ordered. Juno's voice came through the link from Titan's Rest. This is Juno of the New Legion. We are ready. Elias nodded. Then it begins. On the Council's capital world, alarms filled the sky. The Eternal Spear and its fleet dropped out of hyperspace right above the burning city. The Council's defenses tried to react, but their command systems were still broken. Panic spread fast. The humans didn't come to conquer. They came to end the rule that had banned them, erased them, and tried to make them disappear. From his command tower, Admiral Draven Soul watched the human fleet appear on his screen. He stood silent for a long time, then smiled. "So you found me after all," he whispered. His officers waited for orders, but he didn't give any. Instead, he turned on a private channel. "Elias Kane." There was a pause, then a voice replied, "Draven." Draven looked at the sky. "You could have stayed hidden. You could have built a new world." Elias answered softly, "Humans don't hide from what they've done." "You'll die for them," Draven said. "Maybe," Elias replied. "But I'll die free." The battle began. The Eternal Spear led the charge, its cannons lighting the sky like dawn. Hundreds of human fighters poured forward. Council ships tried to resist, but their ranks were broken, their admirals fighting each other. Inside the chaos, two ships moved straight toward each other, the Eternal Spear and Draven's flagship, Vigil's Edge. Draven's face filled Elias's screen. "Last chance," Draven said. "Turn back. I can rebuild the council with humans at its core." Elias shook his head. "The moment we bow again, we lose everything we fought for." The two ships fired. Explosions tore through space, engines screamed, and light filled the void. Juno's voice came over the comm. "Captain, shields are collapsing." "I know," Elias said. "Hold the line." He looked out at the flames beyond the glass. For a moment, time slowed. He saw the faces of every soldier who died beside him. He heard their voices again, the laughter, the shouts, the courage. "Humans never quit," he whispered. Inside the Vigil's Edge, Draven staggered through smoke and sparks. He reached the control room and saw the screen flicker with Elias's ship charging forward again. "You stubborn fool," he said, but his voice cracked. Something inside him shifted. For years, he had believed banning the warriors would save humanity from itself. Now, as he watched them rise again, he realized they were the only thing that had ever kept humanity alive. He tapped the comm. "Elias," he said quietly. Elias's face appeared, blood on his forehead, light flashing behind him. "You were right," Draven said. "They tried to ban us. But we were never theirs to ban." Elias gave a small smile. "Then end this with me." Draven nodded once. "For humanity." Both men turned their ships toward the same target, the central power core of the Council's fleet. They fired together. The explosion was brighter than a sun. The shockwave burned through the enemy armada, tearing their command structure apart. When the light faded, both ships were gone. Hours later, Juno stood on the deck of the Iron Sun. Debris floated all around. The Council's fleet was finished. Only fragments of its power remained. Reese walked up beside her, his voice quiet. "Any word from the Eternal Spear?" Juno looked down. "No. But he did it." They stared at the light of the new dawn rising over the capital planet. Across the galaxy, transmissions spread once more. Humans, free and unchained, rebuilding worlds and writing new laws. Juno touched the control panel and recorded a final message. "This is Juno of the New Legion. Humanity's warriors were banned, but too late. You can silence a name, not a spirit. And the spirit of humanity is endless." Far away, in the wreckage of a broken ship floating among the stars, a single escape pod drifted quietly. Inside, a man opened his eyes. Elias Kane looked at the stars, his voice faint but steady. "Still here," he whispered. Then he smiled. "Still fighting." And the stars, once silent, seemed to burn a little brighter.